Hi, this is a video response to burnvictim77. Uh, Building 7, as you can see in this image here, which is, I have the source of the picture, the web address there. I strongly encourage you to go look at the actual source picture because it's a lot better detail. I got building 1, 2, and World Trade Center building 1, 2, and 7 here marked with red, and then I have arrows pointing to the buildings that I do see, and I still see them with my eyes. I just wanted to show them to you too, so you can make your own decision on the information that I'm looking at and using with my argument. Um, that those buildings are still intact. Now, granted, they're not anything you'd want to live in or start a business in, but you could make a fort out of them, and I'm sure you could go up into them, and it might not be extremely safe, but I bet you could go run around in them after they're cleaned out with like maybe a mask on or something like that. But you can see that World Trade Center Building 7 is collapsed down into its footprint. Its rubble stands lower than the building 6, which was closer to World Trade Center Building 1, the North Tower. And I assume that the World Trade Center Building 6 would have had a lot more damage done to it by falling debris than World Trade Center Building 7. This picture here, I also have the source link there for the image up there in the right hand corner. It shows a kind of a color-coded map of the damage that was done that day. It shows that in purple the buildings that were either completely collapsed or partially collapsed. And if you look at the image, you'll notice that on the south part of the map there, the South Tower World Trade Center Building 2 stood closer to a couple buildings. It was the Bankers Trust on Liberty Street there, New York PD Command Center. They were a lot closer to the World Trade Center Building 2, the South Tower, and those ones didn't collapse. My point is comparably, World Trade Center Building 7 was a lot further away from Building 1 than Bankers Trust, which is a comparable building to World Trade Center Building 7. So much further away from Building 1 and the falling debris of Building 1 than Bankers Trust was away from World Trade Center Building 2 or Building South Tower. It sustained damage, as you can see in the picture there with the link of my source. But it didn't collapse either, and that building was on fire as well. So, inconsistency with what we know about steel structures, jet fuel and its properties, steel and its properties that's used in skyscrapers and in large modern buildings like those. I conclude, until I find more evidence that shows that I'm wrong, that World Trade Center Building 7, World Trade Center Building 1, and World Trade Center Building 2 were destroyed with some kind of controlled demolition, maybe not a conventional one, but one that maybe used thermite or thermate, if you're familiar with those things. Here's a picture here of beams that had angular cuts in them that are used in controlled demolitions, and that's another thing. There was pools of molten lava, or basically lava, but it wasn't stone; it was molten metal in the basements of the towers and the buildings in World Trade Center Building 7 when they were removing the actually, I'm not sure about World Trade Center 7, but I think there was pools of molten steel. If a kerosene fire can't heat up hot enough, even in a controlled environment, to melt steel, it can weaken it. It can it can weaken it. It can get hot enough to weaken it, but it can't heat up enough to melt it. How then did we get pools of molten metal in the basements and in the wreckage? And the only thing that can explain that is either some kind of controlled demolition using thermite or explosives that heat or pretty much annihilate metal, and then from that explosion, the heat from it would cause the metal to melt. But it wouldn't be there for I forget how long it was there for, but it was there for a while, and they had to take their time removing the debris because of the molten metal that was at the bottom. That's not evidence that jet fuel, which is kerosene, uh, melted steel. That's evidence that something else was used, because kerosene can't melt steel. It can weaken it, but it can't melt it, and it only burns 500 to 600 degrees Fahrenheit, which is only enough to maybe weaken some steel, but very minimally weaken steel. And that's my information that I have, and I hope that you look into it, and I hope that you have something to support yours, and maybe you can show me some new information I haven't seen. Thanks for listening. Bye.